Welcome everybody. My name is Carlo. I'm with Rosenbauer, and my full-time job with Rosenbauer is to go around and do all the in-service trainings in North America, so I travel quite a bit. We're here, FAA wants us to come out and do what's called a familiarization. It's not considered training per se, it's familiarization. We're here to make you proficient at using of the controls in the truck, and so you understand what they're all for and how it operates. Okay? So with that being said, we're going to jump right into this. The FAM guide you have in front of you is what I'm going to be using. I have a little booklet that I give out to you. Take that, use it, read through it, and then the PowerPoint presentation that's going to be going through here is going to be follow along with what I'm doing here, okay? And I'll name the page off for you if you want me to do that. I'll name the pages off so we know what page we're on when we're going through this process, okay? Hopefully make it easier for us all. All right, on page one. On page one, it has the truck number at the very bottom of the page itself. The truck number is on there. It's 104522. That is your truck number. That's for us guys here at the airport. Not so much us, the firefighter side of it, but for the airport maintenance guys, if they need to call for help, they can call back and give us that number. It'll make it a lot easier for that being said on page one. So I'll jump on to the next few pages here. Next, page 2 and 3 is just the outline of what is in your FAM guide itself. On page 4 is a welcome and a thank you. Welcome and thank you for buying this truck, even though you didn't buy it, guys. The airport authority did. So with that being said, also on there is our truck number on this page also, and the phone number. Area code 651-462-1000 is the phone number you need to call if you have any maintenance help. As far as the firefighters go, chances are all you're going to do is report to the airport authority, and they'll call up there for help on that, for maintenance and warranty issues. Okay. Page 5, 6, and 7 are just a bunch of warnings, cautions, and notifications telling you to be careful on how you operate the truck. I'm not going to sit here and read that through for you page by page because you'll be sleeping here in the next 5 minutes, especially on a video. So we're going to skip through that part. Just read it. There's a bunch of cautions and warnings. Don't stand in front of the truck and so on. Okay. On page 8, we talk about positioning of the vehicle. Obviously uphill, upwind whenever possible. It's not going to be possible in the airport at all times, but whenever possible, uphill, upwind. Okay, your standard fire department procedures, SOPs on that is going to take precedence where you're going to park the truck, but always try to be uphill, upwind. And we also have in there, we show pictures on the truck itself where to put your, there's grab handles on the inside of the truck, where to grab in and out of the vehicle. You're always facing the vehicle when you get in and out of it. Okay. Even when you're getting out, which I know most firefighters say they do, but they're lying to you when they tell you that. All right. On page 9. On page 9 of your FAM guide sitting here with you is the information on the truck itself, such as the Kubota engine for the pump itself, the Darley pump. The serial numbers are on this page for all of the vendors we use on this truck. The Onan's generator, the pump, like I said, the poly tank, for warranty issues. That's more so for the airport authority. Once again, if they have any issues with the truck itself in warranty conditions, the serial number is already on here, so they're not looking for that serial number later on when it's hard to find underneath the truck. On page 10, this is the information we care about as firefighters. On the truck itself, I'm going to go through some of these numbers with you on your booklet there. Take a look at it. It says it's 10 foot 10 inches tall. That's 10 foot 10 inches tall when it's empty. When it's fully loaded, that actually sinks a little bit. We understand why that is because of the weight. The overall width is 8 foot 8 inches wide. So be aware of that. It's a wider than a little bit normal truck, okay, with the mirrors widths on there. Overall length is 25 foot 9 inches. It's a very short truck for as heavy as it is. It's also a very high truck because it has to have ground clearance according to the FAA. It has to have so much ground clearance. So it's a very tippy truck. It's got a high center of gravity, which is very normal for ARFF vehicles, okay? So be aware of that fact. Empty weight's 21,000, fully loaded it's like 53,000, fully loaded. Wheelbase length is 13.4, like I said just a minute ago. That's a very short wheelbase, so it's kind of a rough ride on the interstate. It's something you don't want to drive for long range miles like I did when I drove it down to you guys. 25 degrees is the angle of approach on this truck. It's meant to be able to go off-road, climb hills, go downhill, so on and so forth. So that's just be aware of that. 100-foot turning circle radius, that's what the FAA requires. It's actually less than that. This thing will turn in about 92 feet, 93, something like that. So this truck exceeds that because of the short wheelbase. 70 miles an hour is top speed. Make note of that. Also, it's a Navistar engine in this thing. We got 50 gallons of fuel. And then the Allison transmission, I think it's a 5-speed Allison transmission. transfer case. It's a transfer case inside of here. A Darley pump. It's only a 250 gallon per minute pump. It's a 250 GPM. It's not big. Okay, this airport truck is little brother in compared to most airport crash trucks, but it still has the 500 pounds of dry chemical on it. Okay, that's what makes it qualify for the FAA. That's why the FAA funded this truck, is it's an ARF vehicle as far as that goes, with 500 gallons of, 500 pounds of dry chemical. I want you to make note though, your booklet that you have in front of you is going to tell you it's a 750 gallon water tank. It's not, it's 500 gallons, okay? It's a 500 gallon water tank and it's 60 gallons of foam. I believe your booklet says 90 gallons. So it's a 60 gallon foam tank and a 500 gallon water tank. Your booklet there that you have in front of you says 750 on the water and it's 90 on the foam, but it's not that. Okay, so make that change in your booklet. It's a 12 volt battery system in this thing. Okay, it's strictly a 12 volt alternator in this truck. Okay, moving on to the next page, on page 11. The front bumper monitor in this truck is 100 GPM. It's set at 100. It's going to range anywhere between 95 and 105 GPM on this thing. Make note of that too. Also, it's a dry Chemcore nozzle on this thing. It's going to shoot out dry chemical out of the center stream of the nozzle itself, and it will shoot up to 11 pounds per second out of the turret for the dry chemical. So your PPK it's 11 pounds per second. Water's 100 to 105. Okay, so just be aware of that fact. On the next page, on page 12. It is the front of the truck. We're going to do our walk around the vehicle itself when we go outside, so we're not going to do a whole lot on that, spend a lot of time on that one right there. So page 12, we're going to kind of jump over. Page 13, look at page 13 quickly. I want to show you just the back of the truck. Yes, we will cover this when we get outside, but anytime you're going to put water into this truck, I want you to put water into the back of the truck. Okay, there's the valve right there in the very back corner of the vehicle, back right side. It's lettered there, letter F. Is where you're going to put water into this truck 95% of the time. Anytime this truck needs water, feed directly into the tank. Okay? We all know, we'll talk more about that in a little bit about the Venturi effect of the pump and how it works. Okay? Page 14 and page 15 is just the outside of the vehicle. We're going to do a walk around here. As soon as we're done with the classroom side here, we're going to do a walk around the vehicle, and we will go ahead and go over that then instead of looking at pictures all day. Okay? Moving on to page 15. On page 15 here, sorry, call me a liar, it's page 16. On page 16, we got the inside of the dash controls of the vehicle. That top row of switches on the vehicle right there, it shows the inside, is the engine exhaust brake. Very effective on this truck. Okay, it's a Cummins engine in this vehicle that the Navistar company is using. It's Cummins. With that being said though, the engine brake is very useful, very strong, and it's helped save the brakes. The next two switches, or three switches, have to do with your differential and your four-wheel drive capability. The very first, or the second switch in there, which is letter B. B is for the rear axle differential lockup. That's going to give you posi traction to the rear axle of the vehicle. Okay. C is the lockup to give you posi or power to the front axle. Okay, so it locks up your front axle, gives it power to the front, so now it's a four-wheel drive. Okay, and it's locked up, so it's posi traction front and rear. The next button for D is your high-low transfer case. On the high-low transfer case on this vehicle, it will not allow you to do it while you're moving. It makes you, there's no other way of doing it, is you have to have the parking brake set and in neutral, or it will not go into low range. Okay, it'll make noises at you, it'll beep and chirp at you, but it will not allow you to go into low range until you have parking brake is set and in neutral. Okay, and then the last two buttons on the right side is for your regen and your regen inhibit switch. Okay, E and F there are for your, like I said, regen inhibit. Now this is probably, I understand you guys have had one other truck that has the regen process on it. The problem with this truck is going to be that it's going to be a lack of use. The lack of use of this truck, it's not going to get used a whole lot, so it needs to be run on the road at least once a week for a period of time, probably 30 miles each direction, so run it for 60 miles just to get the engine hot and burn the exhaust out. These new clean burning diesel engines require more use or need to get heated up and warmed up can run hot, and it's not on the airport here running at a mile down the runway and back. It's not going to be enough to get it warm. So run this truck hot once a week. Okay, talked about that. The regen, if it's calling for a parked regeneration, it'll tell you on the dashboard. If you look at the bottom picture there on this page, there's a little yellow box right above the tachometer. That little yellow box is going to give you a symbol. When that symbol comes up, if you're not sure what it means, fold the visor down inside the cab. When you fold the visor down inside the cab, it will tell you what's happening or what needs to be done. If it's telling you to do a parked regeneration, just hit that fifth switch to the right there on the top row, button E, turn letter E on, and it will go into a parked regen. Make sure you're outside, make sure you're not parked next to any trees or anything, something like that, on a high brush. Because your exhaust pipe in this truck comes out on top of the truck, but it's going to burn very hot coming out of there. Okay, it's going to burn at about between 800 and 1100 degrees, and it's going to run for about 20 to 25 minutes. Okay, questions on that? Obviously not. There's nobody here. All right, moving on. The regen inhibit switch is the very last one. You're only going to use that is if you're going to a call of some sort. If you're actively driving the truck and it's going into a passive regeneration, and you turn the truck or you park the truck, it's going to want to go into a real high idle up on you. And if you don't want that to happen because you're on scene somewhere or something like that, you can push that button to inhibit the regeneration process. That's the only time we want you to do the regen inhibit. Okay? All right, moving on. Moving to the next page. We're talking about the driver's instrument cluster. We just talked about that, the driver's controls. On page 18, we're talking about the seatbelt configurations. This truck will show you if somebody's not buckled in, it's going to yell at you. It's going to keep beeping at you. You can't cheat the system. You can't go ahead and sit down first and then put your seatbelt on first and then sit down afterwards. It knows that. It knows the weight wasn't on the seat in time. You need to buckle up at all times. If you're not, it's going to beep at you the entire time you're driving the truck. The entire time the parking brake is even released, it's going to keep going at you. Okay? All right, next page is on page 19. It talks about the steering wheel adjustment and the seat controls adjustments. Obviously, it's marked in red, danger there. It says danger, don't do this. Don't do it while you're driving. Do it before you take off from the fire station or wherever you're driving the truck to. Make sure everything is seated, your seat belted in, and the truck steering wheel and the seat belts are securely fastened. On page 20, we're talking about the HVAC controls. We all understand how the HVAC in this thing works. You got a fan speed control right there. You have temperature control, and then the third knob on the right side is your complete air directional control, where you can have it on defrost or on the floor or the vent. Okay, pretty self-explanatory. If you don't know what you're doing there, maybe you should take up another line of work. Just kidding. All right, moving on. On to page 21. 21 talks about before starting the engine, you need to turn on the master battery. The master battery is on the floor right inside the driver's door, right next to the driver's seat. Master battery has to be turned on first. Then turn the ignition switch one click to the right and give it about 3 or 4 seconds. Let it go through a sweep. The speedometer, tachometer are going to move a little bit. All your dash lights are going to turn on and turn off. And then as soon as it turns off, go ahead and then fire it up. It takes about 3 to 4 seconds tops, okay? But give it that warm-up cycle. The new trucks with all these computers on them need to warm up before you fire it up, okay? This is the ignition switch on page 22. It shows you the ignition switch itself. There is no key inside this truck, okay? Just a little toggle switch on there. It shows you in the bottom of page 22 what it is. But it's no different than a key. Straight up and down is in the off position. One click to the right is in the on position. To start it, keep going clockwise, turn it clockwise all the way to the right, and it's going to fire up for you just like a normal key would, okay? If you turned it backwards from one click to the left, it's going to put you in the accessory mode, but no different than your car, okay? All right, page 23. This shows the instrument cluster or the center console down the middle of the truck itself. Obviously, you see your transmission selector is A. D is for drive, R is for reverse. Okay, pretty self-explanatory there. N's for neutral. Don't try to outthink it. Just push the D or the R. The letters B and C in here are your valves, both for your emergency or water valves. Tank to pump, tank fill recirculation valve is in there. Your emergency master lights are in there. Your nitrogen charge is in there. We have another page coming up that explains it more, but in the bottom row is your water and foam level gauges are down there, and some of your lighting is down there. Scene lights, right side scene light, left side scene light, the pole lights, and so on. Down below, you see where it says letter G. That is your pump controls, your master pump controls from inside. I can turn the pump on from inside the truck. Okay, turn on the pump, rev it up a little bit, get it higher RPMs, get it to about 150 psi, and then grab your joystick in the middle of the cab there, letter D, and squeeze the trigger like a pistol grip on a pistol. Reach it on the front, squeeze it once and let go of it. Turns on the water. Okay. And one thing I want to talk about real quickly too is you got your siren control down there is letter E, and then letter F is something you've probably never seen before. That is a rollover indicator light. What that is the all airport trucks now, the FAA mandates a rollover indicator because these trucks are such a high center of gravity. In the United States, they average about 4 rollovers a year in the ARF world. Okay, what that means is most ARF truck drivers aren't used to driving a truck that high of center of gravity, and they're easily tippable. So if it senses momentum and lean to the left or right, it's telling you to slow down. It's going to start yelling at you. Okay. Not a bad idea to drive it until you hear that once so you know what it is, so when it first does go off it doesn't scare you or startle you. Okay, but that's what it's there. It's telling you to slow down and straighten out your driving. Okay, all right, moving on. Next page, on page 24, it talks about, or we show 2 pictures on here. The one picture is the pump panel itself blown up in a little bit bigger spot, bigger picture here. On that bottom picture of the pump panel, okay, inside, the C switch there, the letter C, is the on-off. You turn that switch on, flick it to the left, it's going to power it up, okay? It's going to turn on the glow plug. As soon as that letter J goes out, that amber light, go ahead and push the start button, which is a D. It'll fire the pump up. The Kubota engine will start within a second or two. And then make sure your tank, the pump valve is open. Once the pump has water, you'll start seeing in the digital display, which is letter A up there, your pump pressure. Just ramp it up to about 130 to 150 psi and squeeze the trigger on the front, and you're going to have water coming out of your front bumper turret. Okay? To shut it off, just shut off the letter C switch again, turns the whole pump back off again. If you want to increase or decrease pressure, use the letter E button down there where it shows the rabbit and the turtle on there, and ramp it up. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's just no different than a glorified lawnmower engine in there running the RPMs up for it. It's a Kubota diesel engine, and it's pretty self-explanatory on that deal. Okay, the joystick up on top, on the top picture of the page up there. This is probably one of the more confusing things because we have buttons on here we're not using. And the reason that is if you buy a Rosenbauer product, whether it be the smaller trucks or the bigger trucks, we use the same exact joystick on all of our trucks. So with this being said on that one, the red and the green and the blue button on the right side are not being used. Those are normally pan up or pan down. They raise the turret up and off the ground or lower it back down to the ground. And the blue button on the right side over there is normally our high-low flow capabilities. It doubles our consumption of water from 600 to 1,200 gallons of water a minute on our big trucks. Well, obviously on this one, our turret's only capable of 105 GPM, so we don't have a high flow. Also because our pump is so small, the pump's only a 250 GPM pump. Okay, so those 3 buttons aren't being used. The rest of them, the main core buttons, the 4 black buttons in the middle, okay, you've got 4 black buttons there. Those are your primary buttons you're going to be using all the time. The upper right black button is your deploy button. That takes the turret, turns it on, brings the turret out the straightaway, center and level, and turns on the light on the front of the turret itself. Okay, so that's deploy. The upper left black button is your oscillation button. That one there, you can take your joystick and you can move it back and forth, left and right, whatever. But it'll remember a pattern. And I'm going to just use the wall up here for one. If I point my joystick over here and push the button once, it's going to remember this spot here. If I bring it over here and then bring it down just a little bit and push it again down here, it's going to make a box out of the 2 locations. And it's going to go back and forth, up and down inside that location until I shut it back off again. Okay? So any 2 locations, if I can go a straight line here and here, it'll just remember that spot back and forth forever and ever until I shut it off. To cancel it out, just tap the side of the joystick and that will cancel it out. We'll do that when we get in the truck itself today. We'll try and hopefully we can get a good enough shot of that, and we'll show you how it operates from inside the truck. It makes more sense when you see it or put your hands on it for the first time. Okay, so that's your oscillation pattern. The 2 bottom black buttons are your straight stream and fog pattern. Firefighter 1 rules 101 when you went to fire school, the fire academy, is Firefighter 1 is right to fight, left to live. The bottom right button is your straight stream. The bottom left pattern is your fog pattern. Fog pattern to protect yourself, straight stream on the right side on a nozzle, which you learned, like I said, in Firefighter 1, same thing here. So just remember the right to fight, which is straight stream, left is fog pattern, okay? So that's your two bottom black buttons. The blue button on the left side is the one colored button that we do use in this truck, and that is our dry chemical disbursement. That's a momentary switch, so as long as you're holding that button down, you're dispersing chemical, okay? And what did we say that was earlier? When I talked about that just a little bit ago, it's 11 pounds per second, okay? So 11 pounds of chemical per second out of there, round it off to 10 pounds to make it simple math for us all. If you got 450 pounds of chemical inside the vessel, you've got how much? You got 45 seconds worth of chemical usage, okay? That's the most important thing about this truck. That's what makes this truck an ARFF truck. All right, moving on. One last thing I'll talk about on here is that same exact joystick picture in there. The very top of that picture, you're going to see a green light up on top. It's solid green right now. Obviously, it's not blinking on the paperwork, on the page itself. But if that light is blinking, that means the water valve is open and you're flowing water. Solid green means it's shut off. Blinking means you're flowing water out of it. So just be aware of that. Okay? We've had some firefighters grab a hold of the joystick, they squeeze the trigger once and let go of it. The water valve open, but it's not fast enough for them. So they squeeze it again, thinking they didn't squeeze it hard enough, and shuts the water back off. So squeeze it once. If you're not sure if you squeeze it hard enough and the water's not flowing yet, see if it's blinking. If it's blinking, just be patient. Water's coming. Okay? If it's still no water coming, then chances are you didn't open your tank to pump valve. But that's a whole different issue. All right, moving on. On page 25, we got a close-up picture of the two switch consoles on the dash, on the cab itself. Shows you your E-Master warning lights is the red one. The one right next to it is the lower warning disable. You've noticed nowadays a lot of the trucks, the LED lights are so bright they make it really hard on your eyeballs for a long period of time. So we give you a switch to disable the lower warning disable on the trucks, okay? Makes life much easier that way if you're on scene. Then you have your left floodlight, your rear floodlight. Those are the two big pole lights on the truck, okay? There's no generator required for those. Those are just 12-volt LEDs. So turn the switch on, raise the pole, turn it any direction you want to. If that pole's not down in its cradle, it's going to give you an open door alarm on the dashboard also. So be aware of that. Make sure that they're stowed away. Air traffic light, that is the amber light on top of the truck required for any airfield, active airfield. You're supposed to have an amber light on top of the truck. That's what that is. That can stay on for the most part at all times if it's on the airport. If you're going to take it off the airport grounds and on the highway for whatever reason, then you can go ahead and shut that off. But other than that, leave it on. The generator button is for the hydraulic driven generator. Okay. One toggle switch. If the green light's turned on in there, your generator is active. Okay. Then you have your pump compartment heater is the next one. Pump compartment heater is great. It actually takes the antifreeze out of the truck engine, runs it into the coils up back. There's one in each compartment, the very back one where the pump is and where the hose reel is at to keep it warm in there. Turn it on, and it's going to turn the fans on for you. The next button on there with the orange clip on there, you see the little orange button there? That is your nitro charge to allow your nitrogen charge to turn on. That little orange lever, you have to physically pull it down, then push in the button. It's a two-function button that you have to do two different steps in order for that to activate for a reason, so it doesn't get charged accidentally. Okay, with that being said, that light to the green light to the right of that will turn on if it was charged. If it's charged, you need to purge the system out. I'm sure you're all aware of that fact, but if you charge it, you need to purge the whole system. Okay? So it can't be done accidentally, or it's very difficult to anyways. Bottom row buttons on there is your tank. It says tank fill. I just want to clarify that. That's a tank fill / circulation or tank fill cooling valve, however you want to look at it. If you were on scene for a long period of time and you're running your pump and your pump is starting to get warm, if you open that valve or just lift it up, that's a gated switch there, or a rocker switch. So if you just put it up for a couple seconds, you've opened your gate just a little bit to allow water to go back into the tank, so you're cooling your pump off, okay? So the only time you would tank fill that is if you were drafting out of a draft tank or from a hydrant hooked up to your pump intake, which we'll probably never do in this truck. Then you can actually fill your tank back up through the pump, okay? But it's meant and it's designed to be just for cooling. So the tank fill should really almost say tank fill recirculation, but the square space ain't big enough to write all that in that little switch, okay? All right, moving on. So the third space in is your foam tank. Your foam tank is either on or off. When you turn it on, if you've turned the foam on this truck, you are going to have to flush every discharge. Okay, so foam tank is on or off. When it's turned in the off position, you are flushing it. It's automatically flushing. Now you just have to open up every discharge and make sure you flow water out of every discharge. Okay, so that's your foam tank. The next one is your tank to pump. That's the one you need to open up right away. As soon as you turn the pump on, or even before you turn it on, it wouldn't hurt my feelings at all if you turn that on immediately, so the pump can start getting flushed with water or filled with water. So when you turn the pump on, you're running a wet pump. You're not running it dry to start off with. So that's your tank to pump. The next two on there is your left pre-connect and your right pre-connect. Now, that's something you guys have not had before here at your airport. It's an auto charge system, what we call it. Okay. In this case, there's two lines coming off the back of the truck. And we'll show you that when we go outside and do our walk around. But those two lines on the back of the truck can be armed from inside. Okay, if you turn them on and that switch there is green, you see how right now they're both, all three of them are green actually, but the right and left side pre-connect are green in the page there. With that being said, if they're green, now you can go to the back of the truck, grab that nozzle. When you grab the nozzle and take off running and go away from it, when you get to the last foot of the truck or a foot and a half of the hose, it's going to pop a pin out of the back of the truck and that will actually charge the line for you. But it won't charge that line if it wasn't armed from inside the cab. So if you think you're going to pull that line off, and you might need a line at the back, arm them before you get out of the truck. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. It's an auto charge hand system meant if you're short-handed or short-staffed. It gives you the ability to pull that line off the truck and charge that hose line without having to come back to the truck again and charge that you've pulled the hose off. Okay? Next two items on there. The blue and the red squared out items there is your water and foam level tank levels, okay? Blue is the water, the red is the foam. And then the last thing on the far right side over there is your wig-wag flashing headlights, typically more so for a city fire department than ARF. But if you're ever gonna go on the road and you wanna help move traffic, your headlights will flash if you turn that on. Also, when you turn on the emergency masters, that way they'll come on. But just remember the NFPA requirements, 414's on there about that whole thing. If the parking brake once again is not released, you're not going to get any flashing white lights to the front of the truck. That's an NFPA thing. So as soon as you release the park brake and turn that switch on, you'll get flashing headlights. Starting with page 26 on here, this is our siren control box. On the siren control box, it hasn't changed in decades. We know how to understand that. You're going to see, just make sure the power is turned on, the volume, and then select your whale or your yelp or whichever selection you want in your siren control. Then you have a manual button on the far left side. Hasn't changed in a long time. Okay, so that's the end of page 26. Go to page 27. This is our pump mod. On the pump mod of 27, this is where it's the most used compartment. That's where the pump panel is itself. You have your foam and your water level controls up on the top left-hand side up there. And then you have your alarm speaker up there. You get your two discharge pressure gauges up there. Your pump panel is letter O. On letter O is the exact same pump panel we have on the inside of the truck. Okay, so that's letter O, and then your two panels, the switches down below there on M and N. Those are your same control panels there. We talked in the classroom portion, or this is the classroom portion of it. On the airline blowout is on there. You can push and hold that button. It takes the air pressure from the air brake system, pushes it into the airlines. We can push the water out of the pump itself. Okay. Pump suction. Okay, is the letter L. Pump suction there is something we'll probably never use in this truck unless you plan on drafting. We're not going to probably draft this truck. It doesn't carry any LDH or hard suction hose for drafting, so we're not going to be using that, but it's on there. It's an option. The thing I want to talk about the most is your foam induction system, letter G on your page there you're looking at. On letter G, it's the foam percentages. You're going to want that set for your 100 GPM on your front bumper turret. Okay. Before the truck goes into service, make sure it's set at the right level, so it's on the 100 GPM. It's about 2 to 2.5 on the settings, and that'll get figured out when you do the foam testing itself, but that's on there. Make sure it's set for that. If you come out and charge a hand line and now want to use a secondary line, you're going to double your water consumption, right? So if that happens, you're going to want to change that calibration from the 2.5 to about the 3.5, 4. Read the chart, it's right alongside of it there. It'll tell you for 200 gallons of water what it needs to be set at. Okay, so if you increase your water consumption, you got to increase your foam percentage on the FRC foam regulator. Okay, that's it for page 27. Let's jump to page 28. On page 28 is the hose reel compartment. On the hose reel compartment, the dual agent hose reel. That is where we have a 100-foot section of water foam out of one line and dry chemical out of the other. Okay, so you got your dual agent hose reel there. To charge it, you can do it one of two ways. You can charge it from inside the cab with that orange lever right there. Okay, the little orange button. Number two, you can do it in the cab or right there. Remember, you got to pull the orange button down, then flip the lever in. That will activate it, so it can't be done accidentally. That charges the vessel with the nitrogen, okay? Pressurizes the vessel. Now you push the second button over to the right there. It's got with the amber or orange light on it. That charges the line, so it actually lets the dry chemical come out to the nozzle head itself. So that's your dry chemical, is those two buttons. And then the far right button over there is your water foam. Water only unless you turn the foam on in the pump, which you should have on if you're shooting the dry chem also. So you got water, foam, and dry chemical coming out of the nozzle, okay? You do not have to pull the hose all the way off to fight the fire, but you do need to pull it all the way off when it comes time to purge the system out, okay? You gotta get all the dry chemical and all the water foam out. If you're worried about freezing, you need to pull the hose all the way off to purge, okay? On page 9, it just talks about general pump operation. It just talks about the safety procedures of pumps. Make sure you're circulating and flowing water at all times so you don't overheat the pump. And that's about it for that. Make sure your strainer is always in place on the pump intake. And that's it. On page 30, it talks about drafting. This truck's not set up or designed to be a drafting truck. It's capable. It has a 2.5-inch hard socket or a 2.5-inch pump intake there. You could draft out of. You guys don't carry it on your trucks in the fire department, and the airport does not have 2.5-inch hard suction hose here either. Truck's not meant to be a defensive mode style fire truck. It's meant to be a rapid intervention. Get in, get out, and go get more water, okay? So we're jumping off of that. We're gonna jump into page 31. On page 31, it's just talking more about the same, about the warnings and the cautions about pumping. Don't overheat the pump, keep the pump cool, circulate water. That's about all we're talking about in there. Make sure you're flowing water for cold conditions, so on. Jump to page 32. Let's jump right into page 33. On page 33, we're talking about the dry chemical system, okay? This is what makes this truck an ARFF vehicle. The 500 pounds of dry chemical capability on this thing is the same size dry chemical vessel we have in our big 3,000 gallon trucks, okay? So this is what makes it an ARFF vehicle. It will put out more fire than most people think it can just because of the dry chemical capabilities. It's a 500 pound dry chemical fire extinguisher you have hanging on your wall, okay? But it's 500 pounds. I always get asked, when do you use your dry chemical? When you think you are absolutely outgunned. If you think you can't put that fire out, arm the dry chemical, you'll be amazed what it will put out, okay? All right, with that being said, on here, it's a very simple system on here. It's made by Fire Combat. They're a Wisconsin company. They're the largest maker of dry chemical systems for fire trucks. With that being said, there's a gauge way up on top that shows the pressure in the vessel itself. That should always be reading 0 unless somebody's accidentally charged the system, okay? You'll notice the two valves on number 4 and number 5. Those are your two valves that go to your bumper turret and your hose line. Those are the two most important valves on this truck, because if you need dry chemical, those valves need to work, okay? So with that being said, we need to keep those valves clean and dry and corrosive free as best we can. So you need to keep them clean. Best way to do that is to keep the main dry chem valve closed when you're purging the system or when you're loading the system. Make sure that there's no more excess powder getting pushed onto those things. Okay. The main regulator is on number 9, where the chemical or the high pressure nitrogen is coming into the system, and it's regulated down to about 240 psi at that regulator. It pushes it up, and you'll see number 10 there is your nitrogen main charge valve. That allows the nitrogen to go into the system and charge it. Okay. Number 3 is your purge valve. That purge valve allows you to get the excess nitrogen out of the vessel and clean out your lines. And we'll show you that when we get outside on here. We can go through this thoroughly. And if we jump over to page 34, on page 34, it shows what valves do what and how they clean it out. And we will go through this when we get out to the truck. We'll point them all out to you. They are all marked and they are all labeled. I can have you all proficient as heck at this thing and have you be masters at it today, but after about the next 3 nights off of work, you're going to forget about it and how it works. So we've glued the instructions to the sidewall of the truck. As long as you have a 5th grade reading level or above, you should be good enough to go. If you don't, then ask your partner. Hopefully he's got a 5th grade reading level. Okay? Very simple to do. All the valves are very well labeled. Close the valve, open the valve. It tells you what to do. It's normally open or closed, how to purge it off, put it back into service. Okay? Very important you take your time. If you shoot dry chemical off, you need to plan on an hour and a half to 2 hours getting the truck back into service again. Okay? All right, no questions on that. We're going to keep moving along. You're a great crowd. Just kidding. All right. On page 35 is the nitrogen bottle. It shows you a nitrogen or halotron bottle. This truck has nitrogen or argon, I'm sorry. Argon pushes the halotron out. If you had a halotron truck on yours, this is nitrogen because you have dry chemical on yours. But anytime you transfer a bottle, make sure the cap is on. That cap is important. We all know why that is. If that bottle tips over and that cap's off of there, it's going to probably punch a hole through one of your walls. Okay, we all understand that and understand the safety reasons for that. Preparing the truck for use. Okay, this is just talking about starting the truck up. Okay, making sure make sure all your cabinets are closed. Do a walk around, do a pre-check on your truck before you put it into service that day. I understand you guys are going to be doing this once a week over here, coming over and putting these trucks into service and checking the fluids and stuff. Okay, great. Potential of rollover a vehicle. This truck has a very high center of gravity. We talked about that already. It's got a rollover indicator inside the cab. Take heed if that rollover alarm goes off. Make sure you're taking heed to that and common sense. Straighten the wheel out and slow down. Okay, moving on. Hazards of chemical warning. Okay, hazardous chemicals. There's hazardous chemicals on this truck with the dry chemical. The PPK is hazardous. Try not to breathe the stuff in. If you get it on your skin, wash it off. It's best to use rubber gloves whenever you're going to be loading the truck. Common sense stuff on that. It's hazardous. Read the MSDS sheets on it. Engine break-in period is 100 hours or 3,000 miles. This truck's already got well beyond that on it. I believe it's like 2,700 miles when we delivered the truck to you. It got driven from the manufacturer to us in Minnesota, and from Minnesota we drove it down here. So it's got lots. It's already through its break-in period on this thing. Starting procedures, we talked about that already. We're going to just brush it up on again. Master battery on first, ignition switch second. Let it go through its sweep, then fire it up. Okay, when you shut it off, ignition first and turn master battery off. And it's very easy to do that in that sequence because the master battery is down below the seat, okay, as you're getting out. Okay, starting position, I've talked about that. There's no key in this truck on page 39. There's no key. Use that toggle switch there. That's your ignition switch per se. Okay, moving on to page 40. Page 40, we're talking about tire pressure and conditions. 105 PSI in the tires on all 6 tires in this truck. Power steering fluid level, we're going to go through that in just a minute. We're going to go outside and do a walk around on the truck. So we're cruising along on that. On page 41, shows you your radiator reservoir. Okay, it shows you the air cleaner on here, engine oil, and transmission fluid level. Diesel fuel itself, make sure you're using low sulfur diesel, which I don't think you can buy high sulfur anymore that I know of anyways. And then there's a DEF tank on here. The DEF tank, 2.5 gallon jugs is what's going to be coming in here to the airport. I understand they're going to be taking care of that, but if ever it needs to have it added in it, make sure you add the full 2.5 gallon jug if possible, or fill it full. Okay? Moving on. And the rest of this, we're just about done here. The rest of this talks about daily and weekly check stuff. There's a list that we put in there that we manufactured suggestions on what you need to check on the truck daily, weekly, monthly. Every so many hundred hours and 1,000 miles, 300 hours, 3,000 miles. That's all on here. So you can pick or choose what you want to do for your daily check sheet on that. And then the ROM roll-up doors. We talk about ROM roll-up doors. Best thing with the ROM roll-up doors is not to use a high pressure washer on those. You're better off using a regular garden hose with a nice soft bristled brush on that to keep it clean. Enough about that. Talking about the identification plates on page 45. We show you where they're located. They're located on the driver's door. It has the VIN number and the VIN identification numbers from the manufacturer of the truck manufacturer. Our plate is on the center console next to the driver's leg. It shows the information on the truck itself, the kinds of fluids, what kind of fluids are shipped in the vehicle, how many quarts, how many gallons of either engine oil, coolant, whatever, and what types that were put in the truck. So there's a list there for the mechanics. On page 46 is the warranty information. The whole vehicle itself is a 2-year base warranty on the vehicle itself. On the engine, it's from International itself. It gives you the warranty on that. On the transmission, it's 5 years from Allison. The water pump is from Darley. That's a 3-year warranty on the Darley pump. The water tank from UPF is actually a lifetime warranty on that. And then paint is 10 years, lettering and striping is 1 year, and then the external aluminum body is lifetime also. And that, everybody, is it in a nutshell. That's your presentation in the classroom here. We're going to take a couple-minute break, or you go ahead and take a couple-minute break. We're going to walk out to the truck and then do our walk around, and then we'll go through the controls.